Dr. James McIllroy, how are you?
Adam, very well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It's good being on this side of the table, actually.
Do you normally sit here when you're interviewing guests?
Always, yeah.
That makes sense.
So
I'll sit on the right as well, always, every time. Don't know what it is. Maybe a superstition. But how are you? How's the week been? How's the day been?
Super long weeks at the moment because we are imminently about to complete substantial financing for Enterobiotix.
Mm-hmm.
I am very excited about that. That's happening in parallel with one clinical trial that's soon about to read some data out, which is the key value building, defining milestone for a biotech company. And we are very soon about to start our second clinical trial in patients with IBS. Well, in fact, we have started it, but we're just about to get to the point, I hope, of patients actually taking the capsules or placebo. So that's crazy. That's like lots of stuff happening at the same time. Then, as you know, I'm also running a podcast, which is a lot of fun, and then trying to keep myself in the best possible shape I can to essentially maximize my performance in my role at Enterobiotix and be a good person to work for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I know we met up, probably 2-3 weeks ago for the first time.
Flown by.
Yes, and we've been trying to get back in here. Well, not back in here, but in here to do this at some point. I guess for like you and I, there's probably a few things that we've got in common. I think number one, we both played rugby, and I believe at some point we might have played rugby against each other. We're the same age. You 30, 31?
I am 31.
31. Yeah. So you might be a year older than me. And I guess also we've started a company, of some degree. Yours is hell of a lot bigger than mine, which I want to cover all that. But anyway, like rugby, how was that journey for you? You played at school and then a bit after school?
Played
and then
at school, then played a bit after school, played rugby league for Scotland under 18s.
Oh, yeah.
Beat England. Yeah, where were you?
I was
you
would
have been good in our team.
I know. I actually would have been into rugby league, I think, if I'd lived in Australia or somewhere where it was just more popular. But the time when we were coming up, I mean, obviously, you know what it's like. Like most kids played union. So
absolutely. I think when union, I never really found a position.
Really?
And I just showed up to this rugby league tryout with a couple of other grammar rugby guys who I just don't really think had quite made it either, and got selected. And then within like 6 months was playing down south in one of these rugby towns, Workington or something like that, I remember. And we played
Northern.
Yeah, we played England, and then we played them at Scotstoun and we beat them.
Is that right?
Absolutely incredible. And there's an article somewhere about it.
Because England would have had a strong team. Like, I mean, you would think.
I mean, to be honest, between me and you, it was probably the England like
it was the F
Zeds,
team.
the England Zeds. But nevertheless, lapped it
a
up.
win's a win, man. That's it. And
100%.
Pulling on the thistle is a special moment, regardless of whatever form it's in. And playing against England, you know, with the derby and everything that goes there.
Huge. I was standing singing the national anthem, which I know you've done many times in a much bigger setting. I mean, rugby for me, I think I could have been much, much better. And, you know, I was tall, I was relatively heavy, I had good hands, I could kick well. But as I was saying before we kind of went live, I think my mental robustness was not what it needed to be a really competitive athlete. I had all the key ingredients, but I just couldn't put it all together well enough to be really, really good. Yeah. So, for example, like I wouldn't fly into tackles like I've seen you do on television. Yeah. I think we played together as well, and I can't remember you smashing me, but you probably did.
Yeah, there's every chance.
Probably did.
Didn't smash you that I played with you.
Yeah, I just didn't have that. And it took a long time after school and almost to the end of university to actually realise what I was actually capable of, physically and mentally. And now I'm exploring pushing my body to the limits through, you know, the trail running and potential Ironman this summer and all the Monroes that I'm trying to complete, these kinds of things. And I just didn't have that for some reason when I was in school and into university.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, I go and watch, I've got a 7-year-old nephew and I see the kids playing rugby down at the local park, and some of the kids, not many of them have an ability to somehow like take themselves into that, like, I don't know, it's like
just fly in.
A ruthless, reckless place, and some of them don't, but you know, for me, it definitely took me a little bit longer. You know, I was probably 15 or 16 before I properly stepped into my ability to use my anger and a bit of inner rage, you know, like to find that and really start using it on the field. And it happens at different stages. But Yeah, that's cool. So like, when did you finish up playing? Did you play into uni or?
Yeah, a little bit at university, but then at university I was doing medicine. I did some powerlifting.
Oh, nice.
Co-founded the Aberdeen University Weightlifting Club with a
did
friend,
you?
Michael Ferguson, who was a elite powerlifter at the time. Still going today. There was 2 of us for a while. Now there's over 100 people at the club.
That right?
There was 1 woman when we were there, and now it's actually more women than men, which is pretty awesome.
Good.
Some really, really strong lifters now.
I bet
It's quite
there is.
incredible,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
what these people are doing. So that was fun.
Yeah. And you're training, obviously, did you do a High Rocks,
Yeah.
did you say, in Germany?
That's coming.
Is it coming up?
Yeah,
I've been yet.
I did High Rocks in Glasgow as part of a relay.
Okay.
I did a couple of Munro races last summer, so the Glenshee 9 and the Ring of Steel Sky Race.
Okay.
Swim multiple times per week, lift weights multiple times per week with a bunch of bodybuilders at Future Fitness. And yeah, it's just part of, I think, performing at your best. There's the
Absolutely.
diet, there's the nutrition, there's the sleep, there's the cold water if you believe in that, there's the sauna if you believe in that, there's the breathing, meditation if you believe in all of that. And it's just part of that toolkit that you have as someone who's trying to perform at the very best to maintain your productivity and just kind of keep going.
Yeah.
And manage your stress. That's another
Yeah.
key factor, isn't it? How do you manage your
Yeah.
stress? Because if you're running any kind of business, you're going to be stressed. If you're running a scale-up business, that's extremely stressful, particularly one like ours where it's very technology heavy, a lot of R&D, you don't know if things are going to work or not, you have to pivot, you have to be agile. And the other thing as well is there's no playbook. There isn't a book that you can read that says this is how you develop a microbiome therapeutic step by step. We're actually creating the rule book and the playbook as we go. And with that comes immense highs, the highest highs. We had one this week actually when we got some data back and I was just like, whoa, that's blowing my mind. But you also have the lowest of lows. And we've been through some lows in terms of restructuring, having to let people go, things not working, pivoting, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't have a toolkit that doesn't involve drugs and alcohol and smoking and partying,
it's
then you've
true.
got a problem.
Aye.
And in this city, it's kind of party central.
Yeah.
So I've, over the years, developed kind of a program that works for me.
Yeah.
And that involves a lot of physical exertion. Probably push it too hard, to be honest with you. Then it's the supplements and the sleep. And I think one of the most important things is nutrition. And I think we're going to speak about that today. But
Absolutely,
it's just so important.
You definitely strike me as the kind of person who is trying to pull every little bit of potential out of yourself and all the different areas of life. And, you know, that's, I guess, when I met you, that was the thing that interested me about you. You are 31 years old. You have this massive company that is aiming for massive things, you know, and you are where you are with that at the moment. And it's amazing to see. There's so much that I want to cover about it. But first, like, we've touched on it a little bit. Tell us what Enterobiotix is and what the aim is, what you guys are trying to do.
So Enterobiotix is a drug development company. So what that means is we're developing new medicines. And we're particularly interested in a field of science and medicine called the gut microbiome, which refers to all the microorganisms that inhabit your intestinal tract. There's just as many microbes that live on and inside of your body than there are cells that make up you. And depending on when you've been to the toilet, you're either more microbial than human or more human than microbial. Because about 50% of what comes out of your bottom every time you go to do a number 2 is actually bacteria. It's kind of crazy, actually. So what we're particularly interested in is changing the communities of microorganisms that live in your intestinal tract into a more positive form of ecosystem. So essentially reestablishing the balance of microorganisms so that there are more quote unquote good bacteria than there are bad bacteria. And in doing so, you modulate a variety of physiological pathways. You potentially change the immune system. You potentially communicate with the brain. You enhance your metabolic potential. There's almost untold potential benefits based on what the microorganisms produce when they're implanted into someone else's body. And historically, it's been very difficult to move microorganisms from one person to another. But we've developed a suite of technologies and a platform that enables us to capture all the beneficial microbes from a stool sample obtained from a very healthy person and formulate it into a dried powder that's off-white in color, that's odorless, and that's stable at room temperature inside of a capsule. So think of it as a next generation form of a probiotic that's been developed as a medicine. Probiotic has between 1 and 12 different types of bacteria in there. We have hundreds. We have other forms of the microbiome which are potentially beneficial, like short-chain fatty acids. So we have one phase 2 clinical trial ongoing at the moment. For your listeners, clinical trials are typically in 3 phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. In phase 1, you establish that the drug is safe and well tolerated, and you look at how the drug interacts with the body. In phase 2, you start to test its effectiveness. And in phase 3, these are what are called your pivotal trials. You compare it against a placebo or the standard of care, so the best available medicine, and you try and show in what's called a statistically significant manner, i.e. that there's a small percentage of chance associated with the result, that it's better than placebo or the drug. So we're kind of in the middle, if you like. And our desire and our vision is to take our lead products and to develop them past phase 3 into approved products. And to do that, you need massive amounts of capital. You need specialist partners. You need to design highly sophisticated clinical trials. You need very, very specialist, high-functioning employees that are keen to troubleshoot and that have got domain sector expertise. And essentially, since 2017, we've been on this crazy journey where we had this idea, which was on a piece of paper to start with. Can we develop a best-in-class form of microbiome therapy? Can we be the best microbiome company in the world? And since then, through a series of financings, company growth, development, clinical trials, and so on, we've advanced towards our vision. And I mentioned at the start that I was really excited about where we're at. And that's because we are now what's called a clinical stage company. We're in clinical trials. And actually, that's a really big deal. Many companies don't actually even reach the clinical trial stage because the technology doesn't work or they can't get sufficient financing or so on. So we're there now. And we're at this really critical juncture where we are going to deliver clinical trial data this year that proves if our drugs work or not. I just think that's amazing that we've got to this point. And I believe in the technology. I believe in the importance of the microbiome. And I think that our approach is probably most likely to be successful, particularly if combined with diet changes and things like that, which we can talk about. And what I talk about on my podcast is just basically all things gut health. But what I'm particularly interested in is what we're doing at Enterobiotix. Essentially developing bugs as drugs, right?
I like that.
Bugs as drugs. And that has massive and still largely untapped therapeutic potential. And ultimately, I think that every person on the planet is going to be doing something for their microbiome, whether it's a small dietary tweak, whether it's precision antibiotics, or whether it's something like our product, which reestablishes and resets and restores the ecosystem. But we're getting there. And I'm sure in your own life, you know, it's kind of coming to the fore, isn't it?
Yeah, you hear about it. You know, I'm certainly very aware of the word microbiome, you know, which is something I didn't know about a few years ago. I think more and more people are talking about this. You're obviously a specialist doctor who's went down this route.
Right.
And I think that's what we're seeing is more and more people doing that. Like, I have to ask you about I see the size of this enterprise, this mission, and the money that's behind it.
Yep.
Huge mission. Where did the inspiration for this come from? The idea, talk about, like, as that happened, what was going on? Who was in your life? And was this you? Was it just you?
Yeah, I mean, so the original idea was in 2014. So I've been kind of pursuing this vision now for 10 years. And I was a student at Edinburgh University. I'd trained as a doctor. I took a year out to do another degree. Tried to start 2 companies before this one. One was a fitness, health and training consultancy business. Total failure and no clients.
I bet they were useful though, doing that, going through that.
It was. Well, it taught me one very valuable lesson, which is that just because you build something doesn't mean people will come. Right?
Good lesson to learn, yeah.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of time and put a lot of savings into all this branding and marketing. I had this gold package. You take the gold package, you get half an hour of this a week, and you get this program, you get that. I thought this is gonna fly.
Gonna kill it, yeah.
This is gonna fly. Nothing. Literally zero. No traction at all. I was like, what's going on? Why does no one want to work with me? Didn't know anything about having to, find product market fit and to drive into the ecosystem. And what about competitors? Didn't know that there's probably 100 other people doing the same thing. Then I tried to start another business, which was focused on developing a drink that would ameliorate MDMA-induced neurotoxicity. Basically, people taking ecstasy at raves, they're damaging their brain. Can I develop a drink that prevents the damage? And that tied into some dissertation work that I was doing at Edinburgh at the time. And that got a little bit further, and the university were thinking, yeah, maybe we can support this. But then it was like, no, you're condoning drug use, so you can't do that.
Right.
But I'd got this bug of building, and I was like, this is exciting. I love this thrill of doing something. Then I came across a paper that showed that if you move microbes from a thin mouse into an overweight mouse, and then from an overweight mouse into a thin mouse, the thin mouse can make the overweight mouse lose weight, and the overweight mouse can make the thin mouse gain weight. It's like, what? That's mental. That's absolutely mental. And I thought, well, could that be done in humans? And it had, for the first time, been done in humans just something like 6 months before I'd read that paper, and it was published in another journal. For some reason that I don't fully understand, I thought, actually, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. And within like a week, I'd started the company. It was first called Aberdeen Fecal Therapy. So we've made improvements in the name. And it was me for quite some time. And then my dad did a little bit. He's not an entrepreneur. He's not a doctor. He was just enthusiastic, positive guy. And then another medical student for a while. But after about 3 years, it became kind of just me as the founder driving this forward. And another lesson is you need to be really sure when you're co-founding a company about how you set the company up and that you're in it with people who really want to do that. And we didn't know, we'd never done it before. But it's a huge thing, co-founding a company. You're getting married to somebody essentially,
you
right?
are.
And another thing people think is, well, it's easy to make money, just start a company and I'll be really rich. You know, it's not true. It's years of graft. It's years of literally putting the work in every day and taking a small step forward every day unless you get lucky. And you need that mindset going into it. Don't think, oh, in a year I'm going to sell this and I'm going to be rich and it's going to be great. I'm going to cash in. Great. No. You got to be ready for the marathon. You got to be ready for incremental progress every day for years. So along the journey, kind of people came in at various different times. They gave their time for free. And it's kind of crazy because the company's been through so many different evolutions. And I was reflecting on it today, actually, because we've been through an evolution this week in terms of changing some structure within the company. Some new people have joined and we're going to complete this next financing, touch wood, next week on Wednesday. I don't want to jinx it, so I'm touching everything, crossing everything.
Oh, you will, I'm sure.
And you know, the people that you start the company with are not the people that you're going to finish the company with, almost invariably. And one analogy, although it's probably not perfect, is, you know, you're in the Division 3, you go up to Premier League, your team's going to change slightly as you go up. And there's an element associated with that. There's also the personalities change. You know, a company of 1 to 3 people is very different to a company of 50 people. It's very different to a company of 100 people, and so on and so on. And some people don't like that evolution. So it was me, then it was some people, and then the company has changed again and again and again and again. So I am the only person in the company today that was there at the start. There's one other person who's been there since almost the start, and then it's just people that have joined over the course of the year since then. And I've just been totally compelled and driven by this vision that I have, which is that I want to develop drugs for the microbiome. And that's what keeps you going. When it feels like it's going to fail or the chips are down, it's not going to work, whatever, you just have to discount that and dig into your deep inner belief and find a way to make it happen.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear it. You know, I'm sure those 2 failures that, you know, the 2 companies that you had previous to this one were valuable lessons, you know, that things weren't just going to happen. And also, I'm sure there's lots of other aspects in your life that have taught you that consistent hard work over a long period of time is what creates change. It's
100%.
not just going to happen like that. You know, you can probably relate to the, you know, being 14 years old and protein came on the scene and you think, oh, I've been in the gym, you know, I'm going to hit some protein, and you just think you're going to blow up, but like it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't happen, yeah.
You know, it takes a lot
Creatine
of time.
and protein, yeah.
Exactly.
You're going to explode.
Yeah,
It doesn't happen.
It just doesn't happen. So, yeah, this is utterly amazing. So, like, I guess one of the things I want to ask you about specifically when it comes to starting your own business is this topic of raising money, because you've done a lot of that. Now, I know a lot of people that will be listening to this will be people who might be interested in starting a company at some point, but really, like, where do you start with this? Like, you know, like, because it's just something that people generally have no experience in unless they've had companies before or they've got a friend who's done it or whatever.
Yep.
But everything, when it comes to a company, all companies need to be funded somehow, whether it's your own money, whether it's other people's money, whatever it might be. But just, yeah, maybe touch on a little bit of that journey.
I think every business is different, and your target investor base is likely to be different as well. And, I guess the Enterobiotix journey is there's been an evolution of investors as well. So we raised about £45 million. We want to raise another 50 million next year. And then we'll have to raise more and more as we progress through clinical trials. And eventually we'll have to find partners or consider an IPO to propel the business forward, because the cash requirements are so much. Mm-hmm. Now, when we started the company, there was only one employee.
You?
Me. And at that point, your cash requirements are very low. So we did a relatively small 500k financing to start off with. And that was predominantly through high net worth people who I knew, who I'd brought on side to say, look, can you put in between 5k and 50k and kind of get on board with this journey? And that's how a lot of companies start. It's through the 3 Fs, the friends, families, and fools, which you'll probably talk about. No, the 3 Fs. And in the UK, you can structure it through tax efficient schemes, as you know, SEIS, EIS, which gives
amazing
some
schemes,
investors some downside protection. It's a double-edged sword because it can drive investor behavior as well. Insofar as if an exit opportunity or liquidity event comes on before they've got their tax relief, they may want to hold out to get their tax relief. So, there's a double-edged sword, but I think on the whole, it's a positive thing. Mm-hmm. So for someone starting a business with no investor book, which you will create as you go forwards, right? You need to think about how much money do I want to raise first and foremost. And my advice would be to raise more than you think you need, because it's going to be more expensive and it's going to take longer. I would try and find investors who can invest on day one and your next round, and maybe even the round after that. Mm-hmm. Because during the early days, you're just so fixated on your first financing. You think, right, once this is in, it's going to be all great and all singing, all dancing. But actually, you should be the best entrepreneurs and the best CEOs are 2 or 3 financings ahead. And that strategic kind of capital roadmap is fundamental to success of businesses, which are capital intensive, like ours. For a business like yours, you're a revenue generating business. So it's a different kind of model. And I would encourage anyone starting a business to try and speak to as many entrepreneurs as possible who are 3 to 5 years down the road in that sector, in that type of business, because they'll tell you everything that you need to know. And I was told this by some people. They said, James, well, you need to think about your next round and raise more. You think you need, yeah. Didn't really listen 100%. And I've learned now through the, the journey, various different things. So Enterobiotix started off with people who bought into this vision, who were kind of sophisticated, high net worth individuals who wanted to invest. Then we progressed to family office, or just very, very high net worth individuals who were sector experienced, so they understood the patient capital. And then some institutional investors as well have invested. So institutional investors are entities that raise capital from other places and then professionally invest that money, or invest for specific reasons. Like, for example, Scottish Enterprise, who invest to support the Scottish economy. Now, what I'm looking for now, looking forwards into the future, is what I'll call sophisticated, smart money. And that's not an insult in any way, shape, or form to my existing shareholders and investors, because without them, the company wouldn't be where it is. But I'm looking for investors who have got deep sector experience in drug development. So they're bringing more to the table than just their cash. I think that's really important. So when you're building a kind of book of investors for your round, you should ask yourself the question, who on this book can actually help me build the business? Who's built a business like this before? Who's got a supply chain contact that might be helpful? Who can do marketing in this area? Do they know other entrepreneurs that they can connect me to? Have they invested in a business like this before, so they know the ups and downs and ins and outs, so they're not demanding things that are not essential? So I'd reflect on the business, the capital requirements. I would speak to other entrepreneurs who've done it before, if possible. And these days with LinkedIn and so on, you can kind of get to people.
Yeah.
And most entrepreneurs will give you their time, because people have given them time over the course of their journey. And hey, they might even invest, right? Yeah. They might write a check for you, and then that's perfect because they know what you're doing. So as I said, for Enterobiotix, the checks are getting, the cash requirements are getting so large because clinical trials are really expensive that we need to go to people who've got funds, and these funds can write large checks essentially. So as the team evolves, the shareholder base evolves as well to finance the company through particular milestones. And when I start my next company, I will think about what are my first 3 financings. And how do I build a kind of small, manageable group of investors together who are vision aligned, who can support the first few financings and add more to the business than just their money? Those are kind of the key learnings. And the other thing as well is if you're a business that's going to generate revenue, you probably don't want investors who are not used to that kind of model, right? You want to bring investors into your business who understand your business. That's a key learning as well.
A lot of my investors, where or in Pure Sport or other companies involved in, are completely different investors to the guys that are going to be invested in your company.
Yes.
Revenue, non-revenue.
100%.
It's a completely different thing. I've never invested in a company like yours, so I actually don't know what that's like. So I've got a load of questions to ask you about that. But one other thing just before we go on to that is, in regards to you can probably think back to the first time that you pitched to somebody.
I remember exactly.
And I'm sure it was somewhat traumatizing, and was very different to what that pitch looks like now. You're raising huge sums of money and have had a lot of success doing that. But if you're somebody who's young and has never done this before, can you summarize maybe 2 or 3 key things when it comes to successful pitching that you have sort of come to?
100%. So my first pitch, actually, I don't think I've ever spoken about this before, was to the University of Aberdeen Strategic Business Investment Group or something like that. And I wrote a note to the principal to say, I'm starting this business and I'd like you to invest. And I was in front of all the vice principals in the university at this huge table. No idea what I was doing. So I did a Dragon's Den type thing. So I said, look, if you invest 12.5K or 15K, you get 1% of the business. Not knowing what I was doing, no idea what I was doing.
But you were giving it a go.
And they invested. They did it. They did it. They called me up and they were like, yeah, we're in. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And Aberdeen University are actually still a shareholder in Enterobiotix. And good on them for getting in and supporting.
Wow.
I then got a call from a very wealthy person who I'm not going to name, who may have been on the group, to say I'd actually like to invest a lot more. It's a whole nother story. Because within a week, I was in another big table and they said, I'd actually like to give you all the money you need for your business. How much do you need?
So it was that.
And I said, I didn't know. So I had to go back and prepare the forecast and everything. I had no idea what I was doing. And I sort of said this number, I wouldn't say what it is. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. And I was like, oh.
So you must have made a lasting impression on them.
I think I did. And I think maybe I have a bit of a skill in presenting and pitching and exciting people and bringing people on board with the vision. And I stood up and I talked about my vision. That's what I always do. I talk about the importance of the microbiome. I talk about the problem. I talk about our solution. I talk about the potential. And say, look, this might be a good thing for you to invest in. And then as you get better and better, you've got some traction to show as well, which makes you more credible. I think if you're starting a business and building a business in an area you're passionate about, it will come out. My presentation tips, just more generally, are try and always start with a story, because you differentiate yourself, particularly if you're on a group pitching session. I did Scottish Edge, won money there. I did Oxford Biostars. I stood up in my tartan trousers and won the big check on the day against 15 other companies based in the Golden Triangle. Just getting amazing experience, unbelievable experience. And a variety of other things over the years, and the sums of money got bigger. And the unifying theme across all of those pitches was storytelling. It's all about storytelling. And there's ways of telling good stories. I think as soon as you start a presentation and you go, thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Adam Ash, and I used to play rugby for Scotland, and I'm co-founder of Pure Sport, and it's just excellent to be here. And I'm just going to talk about myself for 5 minutes. Everyone's phones come out and no one's interested.
Hello?
Yeah, you've lost everybody.
Yeah.
Whereas if you start and say, my name's Adam Ash, and I'm revolutionizing the nutrition industry through Pure Sport. Our vision is to, boom, killer statement. And here's how and suddenly, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking at you going, whoa, that was very different. He's not even put his slides up.
Yeah.
Right? And you take the audience with you. So I think storytelling is the number one thing.
Did you study that? Did you look into how you could do that, or was it just something that seemed to come?
It came naturally, but I did go to this unbelievable storytelling workshop by a Scottish guy called Bob Keeler. I'll never forget it. I've still got all the materials. Still read them. I don't know if Bob's listening. Bob, You're
Legend.
the man. Unbelievable.
Right.
There's lots of books on storytelling, and I've revisited that Bob Keeler playbook again and again and again. I've still got it. It's from 2016 or something. I found it recently in my office. I'll read that again. And it's all about, basically, you've got like 1 minute, 30 seconds to capture someone's attention. And you can talk about something totally unrelated, like the first moonwalk, for example, and talk about how making that step was crucial. Oh, and by the way, we're about to make a crucial step in Enterobiotix, just like Neil Armstrong. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the best fundraisers on the planet are the best storytellers. That's for sure. Because it's storytelling, it's about captivating people to want to know more.
Yeah. That's good advice. That's really
Get good at
advice.
storytelling.
Yeah, get good. It's such a powerful thing. Like, I've worked with some people over the years that have been phenomenal storytellers, and it's so captivating. It pulls you in and it makes you buy in, and that's important in any CEO. You're clearly like, I want to maybe move on to more of the actual gut health stuff, but you're clearly working with people who are probably way more experienced than you and older than you as a young CEO.
Yep.
How do you find that? I know we've spoken, about people that have been involved, and maybe at one point there are new people coming in. But I remember when we met last time, I think you said 100 people, or was it roughly 100 people?
At our biggest,
Your biggest?
Our biggest, we were about 80, and we've done some downsizing since then.
Okay, right.
Remember, we don't have any revenues.
Yeah, I mean, 80 people's a lot considering, but you need the people, you need the resource. But
100%.
One of the interesting sort of concepts that I've heard people talk about and I've read about is at a young age how you manage people. Because ultimately you're going to be managing people that are a lot older than you, and in some regard maybe have more experience than you. What sort of things have you learned in your journey to date about scaling up, bringing on new staff members, and bringing on the right people, and managing relationships with those guys? Like, when it comes to communication, like, are there any sort of key factors that have made sense to you and you've learned?
Well, loads. It does get easier, not just because you're getting older,
right?
But it does get easier with experience. I think you need to be very open with people about where your strengths are and what you know a lot about and what you don't know about. I think you need to try and get the best people you possibly can. And it's just so, I can't emphasize that enough, how important it is to get A-team talent on your team as soon as possible. And it can be hard when you first start out to know what A-team talent actually is.
Because you don't know.
You don't know. And actually, the biggest lesson from all of this is that it took me a long time to realize that there was a lot that I didn't know. You know the saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you are humbled.
Well, humbled so many times. To use the American phrase, got my ass handed to me so many times. Still do, actually, just FYI. It never stops.
Yeah.
But I think it's that openness to feedback. It's about not pretending to be something you're not. It's about not speaking with authority on areas that you don't have any authority on because you don't know anything about it. And it took me years to get to that point. I'd say now I do more listening than talking.
Yep.
And I defer to experience all the time. And I'm actually building a network of experienced people around me. And I say, do not say yes to me just because I'm
the boss.
And because I might be loud and well-spoken and articulate. You just do not say yes to me. Tell me if it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I made mistakes over the years. And you learn from your mistakes. You don't do them again. Never make the same mistake twice.
Good.
And one of the mistakes was actually not bringing experienced people in soon enough and thinking I could do it all myself. That was a mistake. But these days, I'm constantly thinking about how do I get the best people around me. And that involves restructuring from time to time. Because as I said, the team has to evolve and the business needs to make efficiencies for the good of the business. And the other element is you need different expertise as the company progresses. Like, building a good board is really important. The board should be tough on you. You don't want a bunch of people that when you walk in, they go,
here he is,
the main man. You do not want that.
Yeah.
It should be tough. You want people that are going to challenge and critique and say, no, I don't agree with that. Because it's that kind of discourse that makes sure you stay on the straight and narrow and you don't make a fatal mistake.
Yeah.
I've had a really interesting ride, actually, where I've worked with a lot of excellent people who've been excellent at different things, and I've tried to absorb as much of that as I can. Everybody has weaknesses. And I think the best leaders are the ones that are open about their own weaknesses, reflect, and constantly try and improve and get better. And don't think that there's some sort of God, like, oh, I'm untouchable and yeah, it's my way or the highway. No, it's not like that. The leader has to be approachable. And one of my other mistakes actually was I wore a suit and a tie for too long. You might see in the photos I wore a suit and a tie. I wore a suit and a tie for too long, and as a result of that, I think people found me to be more unapproachable than I actually was because I was wearing a suit and a tie.
Uh-huh.
I also moved my office right into the middle of the office.
Right.
Bang in the middle. I used to be, I still have it actually, sort of at the top of the office with nice space, privacy, but now I'm slap bang in the middle of the office.
Just so that people can come and see you and get you if they want to access you. The best rugby
Come
coach
chat.
I ever worked with did that. He, at Glasgow Warriors, in the upstairs office where all the coaches are, certain coaches would use the individual room at the side, and that was the head coach. If you were having words with you or whatever, you would go in there and he would, you're dropped this week, or you need to do better. This certain coach moved out into the middle of the floor, so any conversation that he was having with the players, well, he was surrounded by other players and other coaches sitting around the table, and it just meant that anything that he was going to say to a player, well, he was fine with other people hearing that, and
that's really good, isn't it?
It's a really interesting concept. It just removed the angst and the uncertainty of going into the coach's office and not knowing what he was going to say to you. You knew that he wasn't going to behave like a dick because everyone else would see it.
I love that.
So good for you for doing that. Continue. I kind of cut in there, but yeah. So
well, the other thing as well is I think I've been really lucky actually because there's been a lot of people that have been on the journey who've just been exceptionally good, like amazingly good, like maybe some of the best people in the whole world at building biotech businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really fortunate actually. I think Enterobiotix is going to be a massive success, but we can't predict the future. And the journey that I've had so far has just been it's been second to none, to be honest, in terms of the learning, the network, the people.
Yeah.
And I can't really explain how and why it all happened like that, but I've been surrounded by stellar people. Like, I can give you one example. My current boss is the chairman of the company. He was the CEO of a global pharmaceutical company, with billions and billions a year revenue and tens of thousands of staff. And here he is turning up to Bells Hill 50 minutes outside of Glasgow and sitting in my office and giving me feedback. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
What a privilege.
Yeah.
What an absolute privilege to have that learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I see everything as a learning opportunity now. You get to a certain point where you're like, okay, cool, things are not going so well today, but I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to move on, and tomorrow's going to be better.
Yeah.
So if you're building a company, you need to get the best people you possibly can at every stage, and you need to also ask yourself on a regular basis, have I got the right people in the right positions doing only the right things? Mm-hmm. Have I got the best people in the right places doing only the right things? And it's a constant challenge.
Yeah. Have you you ever had to fire anyone?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How was that for the first time?
Well, the first time I did it, I don't think I did it very well, to be honest with you. And I have let quite a lot of people go now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely a way of letting people go well, with all the dignity and compassion and the confidence you possibly can. And at the end of the day, usually when it gets to that place, it's the right thing for that person and it's the right thing for the company. And your overriding duty as CEO is to always do what's right for the company at all points in time. Nobody is bigger than the company, including the CEO. Nobody is bigger. And fundamentally, the business needs to do what the business needs to do to thrive and succeed. And sometimes that means that some people can't stay on the journey. And I've had a range of experiences. I had to shut a site and make 15 roles at risk of redundancy in December, which is not a great month to do that. And that was really hard because it's people that you know and that you care for and that you respect. And, I came into the office that day and people were showing me photos of their dog and their kids and everything. And I knew that in a couple of hours, I had to unfortunately tell them all that because we were closing the site for business reasons, which I think absolutely the right thing to do for the business, meant that they were all at risk of redundancy. That was difficult. And it doesn't get any easier because you're a human being, but you have to always do what's right for the company and try and do it in a manner that you, if you were on the other side of the table, would feel that it was done properly and with respect and care. So the answer is yes. All CEOs will have to, unfortunately, move people on or let people go from the organization from time to time. And the key learnings there allow you to improve every time you have to do it. And it's about proper preparation. And, you know, if it's a redundancy exercise, then that happens and you come up with a package that hopefully works for everybody. If it's a performance-related thing, then hopefully you kind of manage the performance and you don't get there, but sometimes you get there. And then if it's gross misconduct, well,
I'm sorry, goodbye.
That's a different situation. It's a different situation. So tough, but
yeah. I'm sure it gets a little bit easier. Well, I'm saying that. I'm sure in some regards it doesn't, but I'm sure the way that you manage it becomes a little bit easier. So, yeah, I think that's one of the big things that puts people off doing this type of thing, you know, owning their own business, because like it genuinely puts fear into people. I've not really. I think I've maybe like had to like, I wouldn't say fire people. I've moved people on. Yeah, and it's pretty uncomfortable. I mean, I've only done it a few times, and it's not like I didn't enjoy it. You know, you think about it for a few days after, and you know, especially if you have a relationship with them. But yeah, so anyway.
I think if you enjoy it, then you're
a psychopath.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Absolutely.
I don't know anyone that enjoys it.
No.
So, right, let's talk gut health, man.
Sure.
This is really the second reason why we're here. Like, I wanted to talk to you about business and do a bit of digging into that, given all you've achieved at this age. But gut health, right? How important is it?
Oh, I think it's fundamental. Now, I'm caveating that by I'm a evangelist, so to speak.
Yes.
But, you know, I could take you back to the times of Hippocrates, you know, the kind of legendary ancient Greek philosopher and medicine practitioner. And he would say things like, all disease begins in thy gut. Essentially, everything starts in the gut. Let thy medicine be thy food, and thy food be thy medicine.
Love that.
So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? So they were talking about that back then, right? And there's a lot of things just in your normal parlance that you say that you probably won't realize. You say, I've got butterflies in my stomach.
Gut feeling.
Gut feeling, gut instinct. I'm gutted. You know, what's that all about? You know? So for me, you know, the thing is the gut is connected to pretty much every part of the body. And without the gut, we wouldn't be alive. But you can say that about all the organs in the body for the most part. The thing for me is people know gut health is important because they know that eating their fruit and vegetables and having their salad is important. They know that if they drink too much and damage the lining of their gut, they feel terrible. And when things are not going right, you're miserable. You're absolutely miserable, right? Think about when you have food poisoning. God, we're going to get on raw milk soon, but
love my raw milk.
It sucks. Food poisoning is terrible, and you lose all your energy, and you can't do anything, and your quality of life is like zero. Maybe not zero, but so the gut is key to so many things. It helps us digest food. It helps us absorb nutrients. It helps us with our water absorption. 70% of the immune cells in your body reside in your gut. The gut is very well innervated from a nervous system perspective. And there's a lot of kind of hormone production and neurotransmitter production that happens in the gut as well. Then there's the microbiome, which is all the microorganisms that live in your gut. And for me, it just makes so much sense that these microorganisms that were on the planet for literally billions of years before us in various different forms have co-evolved with us, or we've co-evolved with them. So of course they perform important functions within our body. Otherwise, we wouldn't be there, right? There'd be some. So there's various different ways of looking at it. What happens when your gut's not well? How do you feel? Very bad. What happens if you don't have a gut? Well, you die. What happens if you look after your gut for a period of time? Well, you feel better. What happens if you don't look after your gut for a period of time? Well, you don't feel very well. So That's quite a lot of evidence pointing in favor of gut being important. But what does it mean for the listener? What does it mean for the everyday person? For me, it means that you can drastically improve your health and well-being through looking after your gut, therefore looking after your microbiome and looking after the rest of your body, right? And I think if your gut is in a good place, everything else just kind of works properly. Now, one of the challenges is we don't actually know what the perfect solution is to gut health for everybody because there's individual variation. Everyone's got different genetics. Everyone's got a different microbiome. But there's some core principles that I think can be applied to everybody for a better gut and a better life, therefore. And it's the basics that are really interesting. It means not having a lot of alcohol all the time. Why? Because alcohol is a toxin and it's an irritant and it damages your gut lining and it damages your liver and the gut's connected to the liver. So if you're drinking too much alcohol, you're not going to have a very good gut. I mean, I think that's kind of straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Eating real foods with fiber, eating colorful foods, eating fermented foods, not drinking raw milk.
I love raw milk.
Should we just talk about raw milk? Okay, so let's just we talked about raw milk a lot. So do you want to make your case?
Like, I mean, there's a lot of people that would argue, a lot of people that I would follow online that would say raw milk's really good for you. You know, it's got all the different bacterias in there that I guess are removed out when you turn it up and put it up to a certain heat, which is what happens to milk.
Absolutely.
You know? So there's that argument. I asked you that off camera when we came in. I said, look, man, I asked Mark in the podcast studio here if he could make me a raw milk flat white, and you said raw milk what? Nah. So yeah, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on raw milk. I actually got some raw milk from my mate who has a farm. I froze some of it, and I was drinking like a litre every couple of days. It was all right.
How'd you feel?
Decent. Yeah, I felt all right. No real difference.
Right.
I was having like a glass a day. That was it. But
So we can let's steel man the case both sides. So the pro raw milk arguments would be, well, the pasteurization process
that's the word.
denatures the enzymes and destroys some of the proteins and destroys some of the beneficial bacteria, which may be good for your gut health, and it might have an impact on your nutrients. Therefore, if you want the true gut-promoting benefits of milk, and you want a more nutritious, maybe micronutrient and macronutrient-dense formulation, then you should have raw milk. So nature's original. The flip to that is the pasteurization process exists to drastically, massively reduce the presence of bacteria that can cause you harm. That's fundamentally what it's all about, right? Campylobacter, Salmonella, E. coli 0157, okay? So whilst it might be true, actually, that the pasteurization process makes it a less nutritious food source, and it may also be true that the kind of probiotic, maybe even prebiotic composition of the raw milk is much better than pasteurized. I do not think it is worth the risk of gastroenteritis from Campylobacter, Salmonella, and E. coli and other nasty bugs. And that's because those bugs may be living happily inside of the farm environment or where it's coming from, but they do not live happily inside of you. And I'll bring you back to the food poisoning statement. For me, one of the number one avoidable things that can destroy your performance for weeks, maybe even kill you, it's highly unlikely, is food poisoning.
Yeah.
Right? So I personally wouldn't do it. Just like I wouldn't eat sushi that's 3 days old, for example, because I know that that's got high risk of food poisoning. So the raw milk thing, I would say, I mean, I see these professional athletes drinking raw milk and I'm like, sorry, what are you doing? Like, and
It's pretty common. It's common
I
now.
know. And I say Haaland from Manchester City. This guy is probably the best paid athlete in the UK. One of them.
Promoting raw milk.
I'm like, Haaland, why are you drinking raw milk?
Yeah.
Do you want gastroenteritis? Just get all the benefits from something else.
Yeah.
Like if somebody was like on a very low budget and was trying to get as much nutrition as possible, I'd be like, okay, maybe I could understand that. But Haaland, I mean, he must have like a team of chefs.
Yeah,
like,
he'll have his
what
own
are you
guys,
doing, my man?
What would you take to replace that if, like, say, something safer? What would you use? So if you wanted to find a food that had all of those, like the goodness in there.
For me, I would have a variety of fermented foods. I have a variety of fermented foods. I would have lots of nice, expensive Greek yogurt. I would have organic fruits and vegetables coming out my ears. I have the kombucha. I'd have the kefir. I'd have excellent grass-fed beef and other meats. Yeah, exactly. We're going to get onto that. You know, high-quality protein sources, high-quality micronutrient sources, high-quality fiber sources. And I mean, if you're Halland, I'm like, you're sky's the limit. You can get anything. You can go straight to the farm. You can go straight to the place where it's made and just get the best. So I don't endorse drinking raw milk in that capacity. Now, for me, it's just a risk-benefit thing, right?
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, you have to. Why does the pasteurization process exist? Some people will say, "Well, it's a government scheme."
There's a lot of people that
Well,
say that.
it is a government scheme to reduce, the incidence of these diseases. Well, E. coli and Campylobacter and Salmonella are reportable, right? Because if they're in the food system, people can die. It's a bad thing. So I personally wouldn't. But I would also say if it's working for you and your gut's tolerating it, maybe your microbiome's robust enough to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I'm picking on Halland, but
Yeah, no, I get it. It's interesting to hear your perspective on it, being a highly educated person.
Yeah,
So
it's all about risk reward.
Yeah, and I can see that argument. So what I want to touch on, we spoke a little bit about booze, but like we know in this country that we like drinking.
We do.
And I can notice, I can really sort of see the difference when I stop drinking for sustained periods of times. I feel better. I feel sharper. I'm more productive. I'm stronger. I'm in better shape. Blah blah blah. So, how can we drink in a way that works with us rather than against us? And what is an okay amount to drink?
There's only one answer.
Nout.
Well, no, it's a very nuanced response. So nout would be if you just take it purely on the basis of alcohol is a toxin that's damaging to the body, then it's better to drink none. You could potentially make the argument to say alcohol helps me unwind. It's part of my social stimulus, and therefore without alcohol I wouldn't do that, and therefore on the whole it's better for me, and I would support that. The other thing as well is, a glass of red wine just tastes so damn good with grass-fed beef steak that's been cooked properly. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
It's a fact, and it's too good. Nice cocktail every now and then, it's just too good. So the answer is to drink in moderation, and it's just standard advice. I think that if you're wanting to perform at your very best, you should have many, many alcohol-free days. You shouldn't come home and unwind and de-stress through a glass of wine or two. That doesn't mean you load up your 14 units recommended per week on a Friday or Saturday. Right? It means consuming less than the recommended weekly allowances on a smaller number of days and having many, many alcohol-free days to break things up. And to de-stress, you should use other means. Yoga, sauna, plunge pool, running, gym, exercise, sex, more sleep, whatever it is that works for you, that's how you should de-stress. But I personally think that to say I'm totally teetotal because it's best thing for my health, when you don't actually have an issue with alcohol, I find that a bit challenging, to be honest with you. Whereas if someone has an issue with alcohol insofar as, I have one, then I have three, and I can't just stop myself, then you're maybe someone who should have none at all. But if you can limit yourself to one or two drinks, small drinks, on a weekend, I think it's a good thing. Yeah. Because it adds to life and it adds to your experiences and so on. Like we could also talk about magic mushrooms, cannabis, and all these other things maybe on another podcast another time.
Yeah, I'd be really intrigued to hear your thoughts on all those things.
Yeah.
Right, I think this time has flown by and we're getting flagged to stop because I think someone else is coming in. But
well done. Great conversation, man.
No, honestly, thanks for coming on. And
thank you.
I'm sure this is just the start of exploring a lot more together. I'm learning from you.
Likewise.
And I'd be keen to just get you on to chat all sorts of different stuff that I know. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you, man. Really enjoyed that.
Ledge.
Thanks so much.